Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, February 27th. It's the end of the month. Hey, guys, before I introduce today's guest, we're 2 months into the year. 2 months, that's 1/6 of the year gone. If you are not 1/6 of the way onto hitting your goal or exceeding your goal, now's the time to get incredibly serious. And I know I probably say this every week, but what you don't want to do is call somebody like me in October and say, hey, I don't think I'm going to hit my quota. What can I do? Because my answer is going to be, you should have called me in February or March. So get busy now. Do your prospecting, meet with people, follow up. There's still plenty of time in the year left to have a great year, but don't delay. And with that, if you haven't joined us before, I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with individuals and organizations to help them increase their sales. And if you have joined us before, you know that every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, I either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And today's guest is no exception. Today's guest spent years as a clinical and stage hypnotist, and you can bet I'm going to ask him about that, before he became a top salesperson, a sales manager, and a trainer for companies like, some of you guys might not know this, but I certainly do, direct marketing giant Guthy Ranker. I can't believe how much money I gave to that company. Keep laughing, Jeremy, but I sure did. I had all those tapes. I'm so old, I listened on records and then on cassette tapes. At any rate, he believes that even the most A players, the most successful, are running on beliefs that they never chose toward a life that they never designed. He's designed something called The Voyage, which is a community that helps founders, leaders, and couples build a clear personal vision first, then align action to fit it. Please welcome today's guest, Jeremy Pope. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning. It is. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm very excited to speak with you today, Jeremy. Before we get going, could you maybe give people the 2 to 3 minute version of your background? What brought you up to this point?
Oh, sure. There's so many different versions. I've done a lot of different things for money, almost all of them legal, as a matter of fact. So I can give a lot of different backgrounds, but I've sold many things from tech support. I worked at Guthy Ranker. I sold vegetable slicers. That was more of almost like a carnival barker sort of job than a sales job, but training people in that. I've done sales and sales training almost all my life. My first job was working as an uncertified paralegal for lawyers when I was 17 before I went to college. And then when I went to college, I immediately started my own business working for a bunch more lawyers doing the same stuff, just selling those services. So the sweltering South Georgia heat, wearing a coat and tie, going door to door, selling to lawyers. That was my entree to the world of sales, really. And it just got better and better from there, as you may imagine. So no more ties for me these days. But being a sales trainer for many years, being a salesperson for many years, and generally rising to the top of sales organizations really taught me a lot about what vision was required, the identity and the beliefs that were required for people to have, because it was me. And so realizing that when I went through a slump, whether it was life insurance and health insurance, or whether it was vegetable slicers, or whether it was tech support contracts, or et cetera, when I would go through a slump, or when my people would go through a slump, it was because of the identity stuff, the belief stuff that was hitting them just so hard. It really made it so that I kind of worked myself out of the sales field almost, because I just care so much about the vision, the identity, the beliefs, the execution, so now I feel more like a life coach than a sales coach these days. And I went through my own identity crisis around that. So there have been plenty of those for me, though. So that's a piece of it. All during that, I was doing hypnosis, clinical and stage hypnosis. I did that professionally for 13 years. And that was the first time that I ever did sales training, the first time that I did marketing training and hypnosis training. I've trained about probably 100 hypnotists. And it's not high numbers, but we had deep relationships and got to see a lot of what makes change work, what motivates people to do things. And I guess I've been blessed by the fact that I've had so much trouble changing myself over the years, just so stubborn or so stuck or so anxious about something that I can speak to a lot of different issues because I've had them myself. So that's mess into message is kind of the way I feel my story is, I guess.
Gotcha. Hey, you mentioned you felt like a carnival barker with the vegetable slicer. What does that mean?
Because it didn't feel like sales. It felt like a show. It felt more like theater. That job was, you go into Walmart and find your pallet full of stuff in the back, social engineer your way into the best spot in the Walmart so that you definitely don't block traffic. And then you go around interrupting people at their shopping throughout the entire grocery department, super Walmarts, I should say. I mean, I guess they're almost all that now. But for 4 minutes, you practically trot around the grocery section, interrupting people saying, hey, did you get your free fruit and vegetable peeler yet? While handing them a little orange ticket in a way that doesn't make them go, ugh. And so then you go start the show and get on the intercom system, or you carry a PA with you for the headset, depending on the store. And it's, ladies and gentlemen, the show is starting in 2 minutes at the front of grocery. In 2 minutes, you make announcements like that. But then it's, once you get on the stool, once you're on stage, so to speak, and you're slicing onions and tomatoes and things like that, it's not so much about sales. It's more about the show, the skill. The biggest difference in the skill set there is, how do you shut people down so they don't interrupt the show versus how do you listen properly in consultative selling? And that was a wild difference to me. It really took me a bit to wrap my head around that difference. And I don't enjoy that style, but I mean, I enjoyed a lot of the rest of it. And so I could get good at that one piece, the shutdown piece, to make up for the rest of it. So
I pretty much figured I knew what you were talking about, because at one point, years and years ago, I started out selling Encyclopedia Britannica, and we would go to stores, set up a little booth. We weren't doing a show like that. We were calling people over and chatting to them about it. But I had set up a booth at Sears one time, and a guy set up from across from me selling Ginsu knives. And it was maybe the greatest show I've ever seen. I stopped what I was doing. I was spellbound. And he was doing what you were doing, except with Ginsu knives. And for those of you,
they were the original ones.
They were advertised all over TV. They could slice a piece of paper. They were these supposedly amazing knives. But this guy was incredible, so much so that I waited till his audience all left. I said, dude, I've been in sales a long time. This was amazing. It was just brilliant. Love that. And it is a show. Tell us about being a hypnotist. I mean, would you have people on stage clucking like chickens and doing stupid stuff?
Yeah, that was a show as well, but it was almost the opposite in terms of what kind of a show it was. I like to say that being a hypnotist, you get all the benefits of being a comedian, but you don't have to be funny, because your volunteers are the funny ones, and you just get to bounce off of their creativity. You need to be good at improv, but you don't actually have to be funny. You just have to be good on your feet. And so you never know what's going to happen with a hypnosis show. It's like the opposite of the slicers or the knives or the jewelry. I sold those 3 different kinds of things. And having the clinical hypnosis and stage hypnosis were very different. Boy, I'm talking about a lot of things that are different today. So with clinical hypnosis, you get all the time in the world and you get one-on-one time with someone, but you don't get to pick your client so much. Like, this is the person who needs help. This is the person who's willing to pay you. This is the person you're working with. And they may be tough. They may be easy. Okay. With stage hypnosis, you get to pick your people. Like, you decide which volunteers you send back to the audience. And then you get the additional pressure. The hard part is, are they expressive enough? Are they imaginative enough? Do you sync up enough in the way that you speak to the way they imagine that you can help them have fun and be fun for everybody else in a really demonstrative way? And so it's got its own stuff, but it's, again, that doing hypnosis taught me a lot about selling. Like real selling, not just the show-based selling, which is almost more like marketing, I guess. But the real selling, I learned how to sell truly, selling hypnosis packages and selling stage hypnosis shows, and then getting volunteers on stage. Because in hypnosis, it is unavoidable for a good hypnotist to not notice the moments at which a sale occurs. Every good salesperson in a consultative selling situation, I'd say in any situation, consultative or not, whether it's car or insurance or generator sets or AI contracts or whatever, I'd say, tell me if I'm wrong about this. In any single session sales process, maybe in any 2-session sales process where you have the buyer in front of you both times, you can feel the moment where the sale is made. But I don't know if that's the case with committee-based sales. So with RFPs and multiple departmental stakeholders, I don't know if you can feel it the same way as with one stakeholder. What do you think about that?
Can you? Can't.
Okay.
Because they typically want to get together behind your back or
right
away from you and talk to each other. I mean, you can, if you're selling to a committee, kind of see, when their face lights up, but there's more to it than just a one-on-one.
Exactly. Well, those face light up moments, or whatever that moment feels like, that tipping point, I always felt like it was a literal gravitational thing. Like my balance shifted a little bit, like I was being pulled in toward the person whenever that happened, was the way I experience it. You get that 20 times in a hypnosis session or 10 times. And so you get a tremendous amount of practice on that when you're doing hypnosis. And so it makes you really attentive to that in sales as well, because when somebody buys into that, like, my arm is stiff, I can't bend my arm, he pushes it down and it does spring right back up, all that kind of stuff. Like, you can't get away from it. Hypnosis makes you very honest about that stuff. It happened or it didn't happen. And so with sales, I think Sandler trainers are the ones that talk about happy ears, but probably some other people use that phrase as well. Sorry, I'm ADHD shaking the table here. The happy ears, it's very easy to say, oh, well, I've got so much in pipeline. I've got so much that's the business is going to close. No, did it close? Did it close? Is it closing right now? Is it closing today, or might it close on like some other time, unspecified time? It's very easy to be dishonest with ourselves as salespeople, but hypnosis helped me be way more honest with myself.
Amazing. One of the things you tell people is they should start selfish. And that sounds counterintuitive. What does start selfish mean? And why do you suggest that the most productive thing you can do when you're building your vision is start selfish?
Yeah. Most people build the wrong business when they're in business for themselves. And I think a lot of people build the wrong careers for themselves as well. Not just are you in the wrong field, but have you set up the wrong relationship with your employers, with your employees, with all your stakeholders? Like, are your boundaries in the right place to have the life that you want? One of the things that I've found about vision, and there are a lot of people I've learned from that I deeply respect around vision. Cameron Herold is a standout in that area. He wrote Double Double and Vivid Vision and Meetings Suck, and just a tremendous writer. But he talks about I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I recommend him, though, around vision. That's too long of a rabbit hole. But start selfish. I've seen so many business owners, as I moved into business coaching proper, I found that most people were asking themselves, how do I, instead of why would I in the first place? And you have to know why you would do something. The Simon Sinek stuff, find your why, all that. If you don't know why you're doing something, you're going to do it wrong, and you're going to build it with the wrong pieces. And I say wrong, I mean, wrong is a very strong word there, but I say that advisedly because I've seen so many people burn out because they were not building to their vision. And that may have been because they didn't have a vision, which is remarkably common, or it may have been because they just didn't have any idea how much was involved in what makes that vision work. And so getting clarity on vision, you have to start with a personal life before you can start with the business side of that. So you have to start with, what do I want in life? Not what does my wife want? What does my boyfriend want? Not what do my kids want or my parents want for me, through me, because of me, for themselves, etc. What do I want for me? Maybe that I haven't been willing to admit to myself. And once you can get that honest with yourself about what you really want, what you were afraid to admit to yourself because it's embarrassing or ugly or scary or shameful or things like that, you unlock so much. Shame is like a giant padlock on everything that you could want. And once you unlock shame and free yourself from shame for wanting things, even, everything goes at that point. So that's why people need to start selfish and like be okay with being selfish there. It unlocks everything.
Okay to put yourself first and then design from there.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Truly.
Most salespeople eventually hit a revenue ceiling. You say that 90% of that problem is actually internal. So what do salespeople have to do to stop doing that 90%? And what's the fastest way to break a self-sabotaging pattern with hypnotic techniques? And can we do that on our own?
Yeah, absolutely, we can. I teach a few techniques for dealing with beliefs and transforming limiter beliefs into unlimiter beliefs in the voyage. We use 3D mind process that I learned from Tom Vizzini and Kim McFarland. We use a snow globe technique that's adapted from NLP stuff. There are a bunch of techniques, and you can break open a belief. Teaching the techniques would require 10, 15 minutes, and I'm happy to do a workshop on that sometime if you want. But the just encouragement of, you can break beliefs, you can transform beliefs into way healthier ones in minutes. That's the main point that I want to get across there. When you have the 90% internal blocks to getting what you want, there are mechanical blocks. But a lot of times those mechanical blocks are because you're in the wrong industry, or because you're in something that doesn't fit your zone of genius. And so that goes back to the internal stuff almost immediately, like 1 or 2 steps away. And you're back to the internal, the 90% sabotage blocks, etc. There's an author I really respect in this arena. His name is Gay Hendricks. He wrote a book called The Big Leap. It's a picture of a goldfish leaping into a bigger fishbowl. Actually, not leaping into a bigger fishbowl. If you look at the picture, it's going to miss. It's going to hit the outside of the fishbowl. I don't know why they drew it that way, but great book. And he talks about it with the upper limit problem. Are you upper limiting yourself? How long are you allowed to feel good before you have to feel bad again? How long are you willing, with all of you, alignedly, how long are you willing to feel good before you are required by your belief system to feel bad again for a little while? Because that's your comfort zone. That's where your thermostat is. I have a friend who talks about people's money thermostat a lot. Another sales trainer, great sales trainer, Jason Canigan, might be a good interview, actually. He talks about the money thermostat. And just noticed early on in his training career that he and others, once you have enough money and you're chasing something else other than money, you might not be chasing it anymore. That's okay. It's okay to stop at whatever level, at whatever ceiling you're comfortable with. But if you are in growth mode and you need to be growing for other people, you have to have a different reason than just money, because you're going to be uncomfortable with a certain amount of money, or a certain amount of resources might be a better way to have it. A certain amount of free time, a certain amount of joy in life, a certain amount of any kind of resource. And you need to improve your comfort level, for one. But you also need to have a different reason to be growing. And more money. I think we can all agree that that's not a deep reason, unless you are following it down to the fear that's driving that and then dealing with the fear. So I think this is why a lot of sales managers have this twisted idea of get your salespeople hooked on the cars and the watches and the nice clothes so that they have to keep selling hard. It's because they haven't found a way to help the salespeople really transform and be able to keep selling past, all right, I'm making 150K a year. That's enough for me. Or 40K a year or 400K a year, whatever it is. The sales manager would always prefer higher production. But if you can have that without burnout, boy, that's the best of all worlds.
And this is not the first time I've heard somebody mention the thermostat, the money thermostat. I know
Nice.
James Arthur Ray used to talk about it, and I think Tony Robbins does too. And it's a fascinating concept. I mean, most salespeople are there to make as much money as they possibly can, even though they typically don't take the actions necessary to do that. But that's another whole story. But you know, I think it's worth mentioning that thermostat, because the concept, as I understand it, is we have some belief in our head that we either deserve or are capable of X. And when we get above that, just like a thermostat, we shut down. So maybe it's that $150,000. Oh no, I'm going to make 175. I got to start sabotaging myself, and maybe I'm not making any more calls or appointments, or I'm saying the wrong things and not closing business because for some reason we believe, rightly or wrongly, that this is what we deserve. This is what we're worth. Maybe it's my father never made a lot of money, so I can't do that because that make him.
Yes.
Whatever that psychological reason is. This is what you're talking about, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So how does somebody who has that limiting belief? I mean, that is a limiting belief. Yes, I can only earn X before I have to sabotage myself. So how does somebody, once they realize they have a belief like that, how do they break past that?
Yeah. Okay. So the realization itself can break some beliefs, not typically beliefs about worthiness. So deserving, and about capability. Or my father only earned this much, so I can't earn too much more than he did, or I can't approach him, or something like that.
Or money is the root of all evil, or stuff like that we heard is money doesn't grow on trees. You know, at least I heard those things.
Right. So there are two things that inform a limiting belief. Now, there's no such thing as a purely unlimiting belief. I talk about limiters and unlimiters, but it's only unlimiters for your present vision, for your present goals. In a different context, even this unlimiter that we're installing right now would become a limiter, and you're going to have to do that again. You're going to have to continually grow and transform if you want to continually grow and transform. Welcome to the Department of Tautologies, right? So when you find step one, I think, is identifying that. And with certain methods, well, I don't believe in affirmations, for one thing, not the way most people do them, because it's usually just lying to yourself. I make $250,000 a year. I make $250,000 a year. You're driving yourself further and further out of integrity with yourself when you say that kind of thing over and over, but you're not doing it. So if you want that kind of thing to work for you, use that as a check-in. Like, do I feel like this is true, or do I feel like I'm lying to myself on this? How true do I rate this? 0, totally untrue. 10, absolutely 100% aligned, congruent. This feels true to me. So the rating process is something that we do internally. But identification, there are so many techniques out there for this that I will answer your question, I promise, on how do we do this. But the identification step is so very important that I really don't want to gloss over it. We have belief clusters, and a lot of them cluster around things like you identified totally correctly. The deservingness or worthiness type stuff, the capability type stuff, and then the my parents didn't, or my parents did, and therefore I type stuff. So when we have a limiter, it's going to be coming from either ignorance or it's going to be coming from trauma. And then sometimes there's this arrogance category that's sort of a combination of ignorance and trauma, where, you know, when you see somebody being really arrogant about something, I mean, it demonstrates that they have a limited understanding of the world, yes, but it also, like, what insecurity are they trying to address with this type of behavior is the other question that typically comes up to my mind when I see real arrogance. And so that ignorance plus trauma, we need to address both of those. The ignorance part is pretty simple. Data. We need new data, and we need that evidence to be direct, straightforward, and powerful, maybe is the word, enough to counteract the old data that we had. I call those the Santa Claus beliefs, because as soon as you learn as a kid or whatever that Santa Claus doesn't exist, you might have some questions, you might have some grief, but you don't ever really go back to believing in Santa Claus again. Like, that's the easy kind. Data, that's all it took to break that limiter belief. All right, now you can give your own kids presents or do whatever your Christmas traditions are, or your Hanukkah traditions or all that kind of stuff. So once you have the data, some beliefs break open. I find that's about a quarter of them, and it tends to be the easy quarter. They don't tend to be the really emotionally baked in type of stuff if data can solve it. So this is what a lot of therapy gets wrong. And a lot of coaches is, oh, data will solve it. And so the therapist or the coach or the business consultant tries to convince the founder or the salesperson or the whatever, the client of the rightness of the new data. That's not what the client needs. The client needs, they need a hypnotic experience. They need a learning experience where they can absorb data. One of the ways that this works the best is metaphor and parable. So one of the reasons that stories like Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, the mythos type stuff, the reason it's so powerful, the reason we're drawn to the 3-act play, to the Hero with a Thousand Faces type journey, the hero's journey type stuff, is because we can relate to it. So when we can relate to a problem, a solution, a way of thinking, a new way of thinking, then we can internalize that without personalizing it too early. And so compounding stories make a very big difference. When you just have the encouragement, like you were talking about, the records and then the cassettes for the Guthy-Renker, the Nightingale Conant type stuff.
Yes.
You were saturating yourself in that stuff. I mean, that's what they told you to do, was saturate, marinate in it.
Yep.
And so you want to tenderize your brain by absorbing the right stuff. And I think a lot of salespeople in particular, even more so than founders, intuit this, or they're told it early in their careers, and so they start doing it. And it's the right thing to do. You want to absorb what you want to be around, or you want to be around what you want to be, I guess is what I'm saying there. So that's good. But the change work techniques, they must be experiential. Whatever they are, they must be experiential. EMDR and ART are fantastic for depotentiating traumatic stuff. We don't really use that much inside the voyage, but the 3D mind process, one of the things that we do is we say, okay, what's the feeling you're experiencing right now? Name it. Okay, so we get a name, sadness or whatever. It could be, my wife said this thing to me and I felt this way. It could be a whole scenario that the person is imagining, and then we're labeling that onto the feeling. Okay, that's fine. So close your eyes and look at that feeling, and what does it look like? Is it a red glow like in the headache commercials used to be, or is it like, what does that look like, and where is it in your body? Is it midline? Is it off to the sides? Is it front to back? Like, does it move? Does it hum? Like, we're trying to get all 5 senses involved in this imagining of the feeling. So we're getting a sense in a literal way of emotion. The usage of the word feeling, it's emotions and it's sensation. So emotions have a sensation in the body, and that's kind of what we want to get to. So is it hot? Is it cold? Does it hum? Is it spiky? Is it a glow? Does it have a hard edge? Is it soft and fuzzy? Like, what are the qualities of this thing, or the submodalities, as we would say in the NLP hypnosis stuff. And so then we scoop it out and hold it in front, and we say, okay, what does it need? It needs coffee. Okay, pour in some coffee, stir it up, put it back in. Does that do it? No? What else does it need? Pour that into, it needs the concept of blue. Okay, pour in some concept of blue. Like these things that we do there's nothing logical about them. There's nothing logical about it. It is purely experiential, and like letting your body and your hindbrain, your subconscious mind do its thing. And so using that, instead of trying to convince it with knowledge, with data, that's what makes the difference. That's what lets you start rating these beliefs up and start saying these things to yourself and checking in and going, oh, I do believe this, or I believe this at a 7 rather than a 3 where I used to. And that's where you can start finding some traction with things like affirmations, is when you're using them as a check rather than as a tool to get there. You need the experiential tools to get there, so that you can have the tracking and the checks in place. But if you don't have a clear vision, you can't build the right beliefs. Identity is formed out of beliefs, and so you're not going to execute correctly. The VIBE, those aren't going to line up until you intentionally start lining those up. Intention is that's the most important thing for lining yourself up with yourself. You have to want to do it, first of all. And I've never found that you can do it without doing it explicitly. It has to be on purpose, or it's not going to happen.
You mentioned affirmations a couple of times, and lots of people do affirmations on a daily basis. You actually believe that they can be damaging, that they can cause real damage. What damage do affirmations do?
It's the integrity breach. If you're just lying to yourself every day, then you're going to start feeling like a liar a little bit more every day, because you know when something isn't true. And so if you instead rate how strongly you believe this thing, and you're honest with yourself about how much do I believe it, then they can become very useful. But they can't be used as a tool. I think the first time I started paying attention to that was with Noah St. John's book, Affirmations, where instead of saying, I am a successful businessman, he would ask the question and open the loop, so to speak. Why am I such a successful businessman? No answer. Just leave the loop open and let his brain ruminate on that. Just turn on the reticular activating system for seeing the red car, so to speak. And just let that be happening all day long. And he found that was way more powerful. And I think that's what first made me start really thinking about what is happening with affirmations, and like going to start confirming that with a bunch of different people. And I found that the people that used affirmations most in the traditional sense of I am this, I am that, I have that, like speak it in present tense as if it is real right now. They weren't toxic people, but they were the people who struggled with toxic positivity the most of any of the well-meaning people that I was around. I had a lot of friends in the hypnosis and alternate health community and stuff like that. I mean, as a hypnotist, you meet a lot of, crystal healers and stuff like that as well, because they think it's all the same. But you meet tons of people who just have tremendously ineffective ways of being, who have taken a tool. They've fallen in love with a tool instead of with a problem. A novice falls in love with a tool, an expert falls in love with a problem. And so they've fallen in love with a tool, and now they have to defend that tool. And so they build an identity around the tool instead of just admitting that they're being a tool. And so as one tool to another, I mean, I could speak gently to that because I've been the biggest tool out there plenty of times, man. I have made so many mistakes. And so I think all of these, I've made all of these mistakes for myself. Not a one of them have I only observed with other people.
Yeah, I'm a tool too. I often tell my clients, use me as the tool that I am.
There you go. Exactly.
We've talked a little bit about limiting beliefs, and you know, I think every salesperson that's been in sales for more than 10 minutes has at some point in their career experienced a sales slump where no matter what you're doing, just things aren't working for whatever reason. What's the quickest way to identify a limiting belief in a sales slump, and why is that not usually enough to change?
I think the fastest way is results. If you're in a sales slump, then you've got some limiting beliefs. We're very quick to blame the economy or some micro version of the economy. Marketing isn't getting leads, or
Nobody's picking up the phone.
Nobody's picking up the phone. It's summer. Nobody's picking up the phone. Or there's infinite versions of that.
That one's one of my favorites, Jeremy, because I get calls every March and April. Jeff, summer's coming. What am I going to do? And I always ask the same question. What do you mean? And they always say, well, everybody knows you can't sell during the summer. Yeah. And then I always ask the same question, which I know the answer to, but I have to let them say it. Why can't you sell during the summer? And they all say, everybody's on vacation. That's not my belief. I didn't take a vacation last summer, and most of the people I've spoken with if they took a vacation, took maybe a week, maybe two. So that's right. Definitely, I call that head trash, and that's a limiting belief. Yes.
Yeah, I love that term too. The head trash. I tend to mock people once they get to step 2 of that sort of thing. I just tell them, oh, well, sounds like that's the time for you to go on vacation too. What's wrong with a 2.5-month long vacation for you in that case? And then they start defending it. And like you said, they have to say it, right? So, oh, well, I only take a week and a half. Really? Oh, tell me more. I think it was, it's generally attributed to Napoleon. Never interrupt your opponent when he's in the middle of making a mistake. And so, like, let him talk a little bit. Let him dig the hole a little bit deeper. That's some of the fun parts, isn't it? So that kind of head trash, well, I think you have to go outside yourself to find it. Most of the time. Most of the time, you're not going to find these yourself because you would have already if you could. And we do occasionally. Even a blind nut finds a squirrel now and then. Is what I almost said. So there's a definite, you need to be outside your own head. In your own head, in U.S. vernacular English, is generally considered to be a bad thing. And this is one of the reasons why. In the presence of many counselors, there's wisdom, or there's safety, is an ancient proverb. And so when we have outside counsel like Jeff, then you can see that head trash. You can get there infinitely faster sometimes. I mean, you might never get there if you don't get a coach, but you're at least going to get there 10 times faster with a coach, 10 times faster to infinitely faster with a coach, a good coach. When you, I'm sorry, I ADHD. What was the question? My bad.
The question was, when you're in a sales slump, you've got some self-limiting belief, but why is recognizing that self-limiting belief not enough to make a change?
Oh, right. Because if data could fix it, then it would. You may have encountered the data of some other salesperson selling during the summer. I'm sure you've encountered that as a salesperson. We've all had salespeople that are relatively close in our circles that we look up to, or we envy, or we admire, etc. Yeah, they can do it. But if this were just a data thing, oh, they can do it, so I can do it, you would believe that already. But instead, what do? You find reasons why it can't be true. And so that flag right there, finding reasons why you can't, finding reasons why it won't, finding reasons why they'll never, that's one of the big flags when you start arguing in favor of your limitations, as we call it. So that's one of the ways to flag it. When you have time to think, this is the only way you're going to notice this stuff. So if you are go, panic all the time, you're not going to find these. You must take time to reflect. And guided reflection is the best way to do this. I haven't found an exception to that so far. I'm hesitant to call things universal, but that one's pretty close to universal. You need someone outside of you, and you need time. I've found in the voyage that I can't really help people that much if they are not moving fast enough. I've had to limit my ideal client profile to people who are generally over busy or moving too fast, and they can benefit from taking time to reflect. And it's because they're not guiding themselves in the direction they actually want to go. They're just, do something. Oh, this feels bad. They're running on feelings, or they're just head down all the time. They're not getting that elevated view at all. And so getting the elevated view is a very important part of it. A coach will help you do that, a sales coach, a beliefs coach, etc. But having the time to do something with it is vital. And then one of the things that I found is incredibly powerful is some form of journaling practice. This doesn't have to be all the time, and it doesn't even have to be regular, but write it down. Like, I'll be damned if I'm not going to write it down when I find something important. I have pretty significant ADHD. It's not just I forgot what I was talking about. It's I forgot what I did yesterday. It's I forgot what tasks are coming up. There's a lot that goes into the executive function stuff, but not remembering the important stuff, the good stuff, the powerful stuff is a big part of what the ADHD experience is about. And when we are over busy, I call it external ADHD or founder ADHD. It's the same as a diagnosis, man. When people get over busy, they are practically giving themselves ADHD, and all the ADHD methods that we learn to cope, they work with business owners who don't have the slightest hint of a diagnosis. They've just done it to themselves with an infinite task list and micromanagement and whatever else, So when you don't have a written record of what's gone before, of what you've learned, there's another proverb that like a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool returns to his folly. And this, you go back to the same problem over and over and over. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to the same problem over and over because I forgot what it tasted like. I mean, that's a vivid image there. But when you have a written journal, it's almost like speaking it is different than thinking it. We speak in complete sentences. We don't typically think in complete sentences. And when we write it down, it's like the pen or the keyboard. I use a keyboard, or I use voice transcription because I enjoy the feeling of typing rather than the pen. But however you do it, it's like vice clamps for woodworking. It's like you've got all your tools, you've got the piece that you want to work with, but you need to hold this in place to do something with. You can't just start stabbing it with a not a scalpel. A planing tool or whatever, whatever form of blade you're using. It's just going to roll away or gouge the wrong pieces out. You have to hold this in place. And the pen does that. The keyboard does that. So writing it down and having one place you go to, most people would call that a journal, but whatever that is for you, one place where you can go back and find it. Like however many curse words you want to put on that, go back and be able to find it. That is the key right there. So you have to be able to make progress, not just changes. You have to be able to build on your previous progress. That's one of the biggest keys, honestly.
Gotcha. Now I'm looking at you, so I can't see him, but I think I just heard my dog who's laying behind me on his bed. I think he just picked up his head when you said vomit, because going back to the vomit, boy, oh boy, there's nothing I hate worse than if I'm walking around in the house and I what are you doing? Oh no, you're
right.
Oh, it's
at least cats give you a warning with the hairballs.
In researching people like you, so that we could have an intelligent conversation, I find that you say a lot of things that are really fascinating and go against what most people might suggest. One of the things you suggest is willpower is the last tool you should reach for.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So there was a study that showed that people who believe they have infinite willpower have more willpower than people that believe their willpower is finite. But the existence of the study itself showed the finiteness of the people who believed they had infinite willpower even. They were wrong, but it was a really useful belief to have because it gave them 30% more, 40% more willpower, even though it wasn't strictly correct. So when you have a limited tank, in ADHD, we talk about, well, a lot of people do. They talk about, imagine you have a certain number of spoons in the day and you can spend these spoons on things like a currency you can spend on getting things done during the day. A, you don't have as many spoons as most people do. B, your spoons they're different purposes. Like this one's a teaspoon and this one is what do you call the ones with the slots in them? A slotted spoon for serving casseroles or whatever. So they do different things. You have different types of energy compared to most people. It's the divide is more vast. And you forget where you put your spoons. So you don't have as many, you've got different types, and you forget where you put them sometimes. You have to be really careful with those spoons. So willpower is kind of the same thing. We do have a limited tank of willpower, whether it's a big tank or a small tank, and it is going to run out. So when you are reaching for willpower, you're going to run out at some point. That's reason number one. Reason number two is, do you want to always have to gut it out? If so, that means you don't get to learn new things. Once you've learned something, once you've put the habit in place, once you've learned the habit of brushing your teeth, do you really want to have to will yourself into brushing your teeth every morning? Do you really want to have to will yourself into doing the prospecting calls? Do you want to have to psych yourself up to that same level as you did at the very beginning? Or would you rather the difficulty level decrease over time? So that's the setup for it. What you should be reaching for instead is systems that support you. Now, I have a great number of systems that must support me. I have to have a lot more structure around me to function well as a salesperson than most of the great salespeople I've met have to have. I do consider myself a good salesperson, not a great salesperson. Even though I will typically go to the top 1, 2, 3 out of hundreds of salespeople in whatever organization I tend to join, it is only when I have a significant amount of structure around my pipeline and around my method and around the leads that I do really, really well. I do not do well with outbound prospecting. I absolutely suck at it, and I haven't found a way to make it work with my brain. Not even like limiting belief, like call reluctance type stuff. I've dealt with that too, plenty of that. But beyond call reluctance, I can't manage a CRM of more than about 20 people. I fall down once my CRM hits 20 leads in active stages in the pipeline, like non-wait stages in the pipeline. I fall apart. So the systems that I have to be so incredibly explicit on the context. My CRM notes have to be a page long. I cannot put myself in a situation where I have to sell someone on things where I have to remember something and I'm selling a low dollar, high volume opportunity. I can sell low dollar, high volume just fine if I'm selling vegetable slicers, because that requires zero context. I don't have to know anything about the person. But when I do want to have to know something about the person, I get so curious, I can't track it. And so I have to give myself the ability to remember all of that about these people. And then I have to have an assistant. If I want more than 20 opportunities in my pipeline, I need a personal assistant. And so I go out and I get myself a personal assistant whenever I have that situation going on. I have to have inbound opportunities because I can't do the outbound prospecting, even with a personal assistant involved. Like just tracking, what are we doing here? Like the method, the system, the process has to be so incredibly laid out for me. It's just not worth going outbound. And so content. So like make marketing really do its job instead of trying to do marketing's job for it by doing prospecting. That's not a clever way of saying it, but I hope the point comes across. So supporting myself with systems is the only thing that has ever made anything work. For somebody that builds habits dearly, it is difficult to build good habits for me. Hypnosis was, that was the reason that I started hypnosis myself, was to build good habits. And that became like the superpower hack for building them. But man, there are some habits that I've tried to build and they just don't build. I don't have those bricks internally. Am I going to lament that fact? Am I going to berate myself over that fact? Am I going to try harder? I'm done. No, I'm 44. I'm done trying harder. I actually registered a domain a while back, something like Trying My Easiest. And I was going to build on that. But it's just, I'm trying my easiest from now on. I don't want to try harder. I want to do things the easy way. There are plenty of hard things in life. We lose people. We lose babies and parents. And, there are plenty of hard things in life. The things we can systemize don't have to be the hard ones. And when you can have an internal system, it makes so many things easier.
I'm with you 1,000,000%. I always say that sales is not an easy gig. And part of my goal is, how do I make it as easy as I possibly can, given that it's not an easy gig? How does addressing a foundational personal crisis make a salesperson better at their job?
Oh, yeah, man. So there are a lot of people that are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy. There's some machinery outside that's getting louder and louder. Can you hear it? You're good?
Nope.
Okay. The Maslow's hierarchy is the idea that once you have met your confidence criteria for this level, then you can start thinking at other levels. You can start having vision about other levels. And I find this really powerful. It's not, so think of it this way. If we're talking about sales training, all this stuff we've been having a conversation about, and I start choking, how much do I care about our conversation?
Not at all.
Zero. Exactly zero. I'm not even going
to stay alive.
Yeah. I care about air. That's the one thing I care about in that moment. There's this saying that you have all these hopes and dreams, but a sick person, they only have one dream, to feel better. And it's really sappy, but it's true at the same time. If you don't have your health, you've got nothing. Like, there's a lot of, folk wisdom around that. Maslow's hierarchy represents that. It's a useful way of representing that idea. So if I don't have air, if I am on the outs with my wife, if I am not assured that I am able to eat next week, then I've got open loops going in my head. I've got huge brain space being taken up. Let's say we have 3 of those open loops at 11% apiece. That's 33% of my brain power gone that I can't use on the stuff I want to use it on. So when you resolve a foundational crisis, you get yourself to freedom. You put yourself in a pressure washing the windows is what it is. Goodness. You get yourself to a spot where you now have your brain back. And I've heard people say that phrase a lot when they start resolving the crisis. And this is the most difficult thing about resolving crises, is that not because they are difficult to resolve, I'd say most of the time, not all the time, but because we lose something if we do the simple thing. And so the fear of grief is what you're really addressing when you're addressing a crisis most of the time. You're addressing a fear of losing something, fear of loss, fear of grief, however you want to talk about that. And so when you're willing to admit, A, I'm afraid, and then B, you become willing to lose that thing, the crisis is almost over at that point. The decision itself is not hard once you are willing to lose. And so I talk about micro grief a fair amount, but that resolving foundational crises, the reason that resolving them is so powerful is because you get your brain back. And most of that is because the fear is no longer there. So when you allow yourself to grieve something that's impossible, when you allow yourself to admit that you've lost it or admit that you're going to lose it, as soon as you make this decision, you're going to lose a relationship or you're going to lose someone's goodwill or I shut down a business at one point and went under hard. I augured it into the ground. And it was incredibly hard to let myself admit this is over. My friend Nitzan said, Jeremy, this is not a place where you can avoid the iceberg. You are the captain of the Titanic. You've already hit the iceberg. The only question at this point is, when will you let your people onto the lifeboats? That broke me, man. Like that week, I called all my clients and I called all my people, all my employees and et cetera. And I shut it all down because the employees, I mean, everybody knew that it was in trouble. This was a troubled business at that point. And there wasn't anyone that I wasn't open and honest with, but I can't do it anymore is a very different thing than I'm having trouble. Yep. And just admitting, oh, this is so far beyond me that my buddy who's not even in the business can see this is over. How am I going to be kind here rather than how am I going to try and save the business? No, it's how do I save this person that I care about, the clients and employees, more hassle and trouble and their own anxiety and or despair and et cetera. So
Jeremy, so it sounds like you're saying that when you deal with your foundational crisis, you're freeing up more of your brain to focus on the things that you need to focus on.
Absolutely.
To be successful. And I'm afraid that we're out of time. I didn't mean to cut you off, but we are out of time. And before we go, I want to share my screen and give you a chance to tell people how they can get in touch with you if they're looking to work with you or want some more information. And this will get converted to a podcast. So for those people who will be listening, instead of just seeing it, please explain for them how they can reach you if they're interested.
Yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I think you can find me at linkedin.com/in/Jeremy Pope with a dash between my names. It's on screen. I see it there. Okay. So I know you can find me there, as a matter of fact. So connect with me on LinkedIn, and I would love to give you a vision map. I would love to give you my 30-30 method of the ways that we build vision. And you can sign up for the Mental Model Monday newsletter as well, which is always a delight to have people telling me what they got from that. I crave your feedback on the Mental Model Monday. So
is there a website? Is there a website you want to drive people to?
Just go to LinkedIn. All the links are on LinkedIn there. Mental Model Monday links to the proper opt-in form from LinkedIn. So
beautiful. Yeah. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your brilliance so generously. And I will end as I always do. Gang, please remember, sales is a game of making things happen. Get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Jeremy. Thanks.
Thank you.